Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to the weekend preview for the final race before the summer break, the 2023 Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. And of course, this race taking place about a month earlier than it normally does. I think it might, this Belgian Grand Prix, I think it might have taken place in July before, back in like maybe the 1980s for a couple years, or even the 70s, especially when it was at a different track, such as I think Zolder, I think it was, when they, for a time weren't racing at Spa. But it does feel weird that we're coming to Spa as the final race before the summer break. Normally, Hungary is the final race before the summer break, so yeah, it's a bit of a weird feeling. But I am excited for the weekend, despite it obviously being a sprint weekend, which is going to, for me at least, somewhat ruin my enjoyment of the weekend. Given how close things are in Formula 1, behind obviously Red Bull, it should be an exciting weekend, dry or wet. And looking at the forecast, we should have not a pretty wet weekend, but it's not going to be bone dry all weekend, pretty much like it was in Hungary. There's really a 50-50 chance of rain for every session this weekend. So, yeah, it should be a very interesting weekend. Let's hope a better race on the Sunday than it was in Hungary. But, yeah, we'll get into, of course, tonight in this weekend preview, the teams respectively and how I think individually they'll get on, given the track characteristics and where they all are at the moment with their car. We'll also get into some comparable sectors from tracks we've recently been to, which are comparable to certain parts of the Spa Francorchamps circuit. So we can, get into what teams should go well this weekend. And then, of course, I will get into my initial qualifying and race predictions going to the weekend. Those predictions, by the way, are if it is dry in both qualifying and the race. I've not done those predictions in regards to if it is a wet qualifying or a wet race. It is only if it is a dry qualifying and race. We'll also get into some info about upgrades. There are some upgrades this weekend. We're probably, though, or well, not even probably, we will find out a lot more tomorrow when the FIA releases their official list of who has brought what updates. But I think we do have visually one upgrade from a top team to bring you guys, which I think you'll be definitely interested in regards to the Mercedes team. And yeah, we've also got possibly upgrades for Aston Martin. I'm hearing Alpine as well. So, yeah, we will see about that later, not just in this stream, but also later in the race weekend as well. Just wanted to say to you guys as well, hope you're all doing well. Have you had a good week so far? And no matter what time zone you're in or what part of the world you're from, hope you're all having as best a time as possible. If you're wondering about how my recovery's going, it's been okay. I've still had quite a bit of, not necessarily pain, it's more just aching in my gums around the area where the tooth was removed. And I think really a lot of the aching is because of how many times I was injected with whatever the substance is to numb, your gums whilst they perform the operation. Yeah, still quite a bit of soreness. It's better now than it was, say, on Monday or Tuesday, but yeah, it's still going to take a bit of time to get back to 100%. Hopefully by the end of the race weekend, I should be pretty much at 100% recovered. But obviously they, as long as the pain doesn't get worse or the aching doesn't get worse, I should be able to do and cover the entire weekend as planned. And of course, we've got plenty of content coming your way this weekend. Obviously, the qualifying session that sets the grid for Sunday's race is tomorrow afternoon. And then on Saturday, we have the sprint race. And then on Sunday, we have the main event, the Sunday Grand Prix in Belgium. So plenty of stuff coming your way in the next few days. But before we get into the race weekend and previewing how I think things will go, let's just touch on the championship standings coming out of the Hungarian Grand Prix. So Max Verstappen, 110 points clear of Sergio Perez. He is not very far away from winning officially his third world title. It's probably going to be late September or even early October at the earliest, I reckon, is when he'll win that third world championship. Incredible form at the minute. Verstappen on another planet, really, compared to everybody else. And he's a clear favourite, of course, for this weekend. Sergio Perez has pulled away a bit from the cars behind and is definitely looking better now than what we saw, say, a month ago. Fernando Alonso, his hold on third place in the championship is growing very weak, and I'd be very surprised if he was still in third in the championship at the conclusion of this weekend's race. He's 6 points clear of Lewis Hamilton, who is in P4, and then George Russell is up to 5th after finishing 6th in Hungary. Carlos Sainz just behind in 6th. And then Charles Leclerc in 7th. Of course, those three have been very close in the championship all season long. And then 20 points behind Leclerc in 8th place is Lando Norris in the McLaren. Norris probably won't climb any higher than 8th after this weekend's race. It's going to take something quite special for him to climb up to 7th. But I think given how quick McLaren are right now, and if they keep this up for the rest of the season, I think there's a pretty good chance that Lando will finish 5th or even 4th in the Drivers' Championship. So Lando looking very, very good at the moment. Lance Stroll back down to 9th place, and Esteban Ocon still, only for the moment, rounding out the top 10. But Piastri in the second McLaren, I think, is only 4 points behind in the championship, so Ocon probably will be displaced and be dropped out of the top 10 after this weekend's race, as long as Oscar finishes the race, really, and has, of course, decent enough pace. And on the Constructors' side, Red Bull are 229 points clear of Mercedes. Mercedes now very comfortable in their hold on second. They are how many points? 39 points, I think it is. Yeah, 39 points clear of Aston Martin. And of course, at the minute, Aston Martin are a lot slower than the Mercedes team. And you got Ferrari, 17 points behind Aston Martin. Even though Ferrari and Hungary were not very quick, given where Aston Martin are at the minute, Ferrari will probably overtake Aston Martin. Maybe not this weekend in the championship, but I would not be surprised if by the time we finished up the European part of the season, which of course will be the Italian Grand Prix at Monza in the first weekend of September, wouldn't be surprised by then if Ferrari were up to third and a few points ahead of Aston Martin. McLaren are in 5th, 80 points behind Ferrari, and McLaren, I think, as long as they can maintain this pace they've had in the last couple of races for the rest of the year, I think McLaren are the favourites to finish third in the championship, given we've still got, 10, 11 races left? And they've been scoring in the last couple races, 25 to 30 points? And if they keep that up every race weekend, of course, this weekend is a sprint weekend, McLaren, they can absolutely do it. And they might not end the season that far away from Mercedes-Benz either. Mercedes, though, still should finish in second place. It would take something quite incredible for McLaren to overtake the Mercedes team. Alpine, 40 points behind McLaren in 6th. Williams still in P7. This is going to be a big weekend for Williams. Haas in 8th. Alfa Romeo 9th. Alfa Romeo had such a massive chance in Hungary to overtake Williams and Haas, but they blew it. And really, the two drivers were the ones that blew it. And AlphaTauri still at the foot of the championship, where most likely they will finish the season. But let's get into the track itself And here it is, the Spa Francorchamps circuit. So the yellow line is the first sector, the red line, or lines, is the middle sector, and the blue is the final sector. As you can see, it says Sector 1, Sector 2, Sector 3. Sector 1 is all about power. The only corner, really, you have to worry about in terms of having to brake for, actually slow down for, is Turn 1. After that, it's just flat out all the way until Les Combes at Turn 5. The middle sector, a very good test of aerodynamically just how your car is performing at the moment. So even in dry conditions, it will still be good to see in that middle sector just how teams, how much grip they've got at the minute. And if, we've got certain teams bringing certain upgrades, middle sector will be a great indicator to see how those upgrades are performing relative compared to teams that they have been, say, slower than in the recent races in 2023. And then the final sector, again, very similar to the first sector. It is flat out except for turn 18 and 19, the final chicane, which is very slow, the bus stop chicane, of course. And then you exit that and then cross the finish line. It is a power circuit because even in the middle sector, a lot of the corners are quite high speed. And between turn 9 and turn 12, you are going at quite a speed. So it is a power track for sure. And if you, if you don't have, or if you are quite bad when it comes to straight line speed, no matter how good your car is through the corners, you are going to struggle a bit more this weekend than you would do normally at most racetracks. So with the first sector, I've decided to compare that to the first sector at the Red Bull Ring, which is a lot shorter, but is similar to the first sector in Spa because it's in the Red Bull Ring. Again, it's flat out, but there is only one real corner to contend with. And in that first sector in Austria, Red Bull and Ferrari were pretty much as quick as each other. Mercedes were surprisingly quite quick in that first sector as well. Mercedes, it does appear, have brought a lower downforce new rear wing, which really could help with their top speed this weekend. So watch out for Mercedes in that first sector and the third sector as well, because it might be quite a surprise with their top speed. Williams, of course, very quick. They are the dark horse of the weekend, are the Williams team. McLaren weren't lapping that bad. Of course, this was back in Austria, the first weekend where they had the new upgrade. Aston Martin were, given how short this sector was, quite a bit away from Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes. Haas weren't looking actually that great in the first sector, but do watch out for them to a certain extent because they do have, obviously, a Ferrari power unit. The Ferrari powered cars are the, the Ferrari power unit is the strongest out there in terms of pure performance. Alpine weren't lapping very well in that first sector, and their top speed, as of late, has not been that impressive. And actually, there are going to be discussions this weekend because Alpine have maybe protested is the wrong word, but because, according to them, they're about 30 horsepower down, or even maybe as much as 40 horsepower down on the other power units. They want the engines to be equalized, given that there, of course, is an engine freeze when it comes to development. I'll let you know any developments on that and whether that is agreed on for, say, next season. But Alpine, I don't think will be quick at all this weekend. Given that they were so disappointing in Hungary, where I thought they would be quite competitive, especially after Friday practice, I don't really see, around this type of track, Alpine doing much of anything, unless their upgrade, whatever it is, really does work for them. And then Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri, the two slowest teams, they should still be the two slowest teams this weekend. I know Alfa Romeo was super quick in Hungary, but Hungary is quite a different track from this one. Spa is a lot longer, of course, and what you need to be quick here is quite a bit different from what you need in Hungary. And plus, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri at the minute are probably the two teams who have the biggest issue with drag on their car, because regularly Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri don't really lap that quickly in sectors where you're, mostly flat out. And even in the speed traps, their top speeds are not very strong. So, yeah, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri should be the two slowest teams this weekend. The middle sector, though, here in Spa, again, that's really the sector that will show off aerodynamic prowess, I guess you could say, and who really is strong in that area. I've decided to compare it to the middle sector in Hungary. And the reason I've decided to compare it to the middle sector in Hungary, even though the middle sector in Hungary is quite a bit shorter, is because a lot of the corners in the middle sector in Spa are quite fast, and that is the case at the Hungaroring as well. And McLaren and Red Bull were pretty much on the same pace in that middle sector. McLaren should be at their strongest in the middle sector. And if they do have a good weekend, it'll be because of that speed through there. Mercedes were not great, but not terrible. A tenth of a second away, really, from McLaren and Red Bull in the middle sector. I think when it comes to the comparison between Mercedes and McLaren, I think definitely in McLaren's favour, the middle sector will play into their hands a lot more. In Sector 1 and Sector 3, though, that's where Mercedes should be able to definitely get a bit closer to McLaren, if not be quicker than the McLaren team. For Alfa Romeo, if they are quick this weekend, it will be really because of their middle sector speed, as we saw in the corners, especially the high-speed corners in Hungary. They were incredibly quick. Alfa Romeo really are, I think, praying for rain this weekend, as much rain as possible, because I think in dry conditions, they just don't have a car well enough suited to this track. Ferrari were losing quite a bit of time around such a short middle sector, and that's really where Ferrari this weekend, at least in qualifying, are going to be losing the time to Red Bull, is the middle sector. Because in the first and the third sector, really, Red Bull and Ferrari should be on the same pace. But again, middle sector, I think Ferrari will probably be just way too far behind. Obviously, in the middle sector in Hungary, they're a quarter of a second behind. It'll probably be closer to half a second away in the middle sector, given how the Red Bull, aerodynamically, of course, is so much better right now than the Ferrari car. Aston Martin were okay, I guess, in the middle sector, given where they are at the minute. Haas, not that great, and Alpine, obviously, very disappointing. Of course, the reason they were so far off in lap time is because we had the alternate tyre format in qualifying last week, and that's why they were so far off McLaren in the middle sector, because the Alpine did their times in qualifying on the mediums, the AlphaTauri on the mediums as well, and the Williams did theirs on the hards. So, yeah, in the middle sector here at Spa, Red Bull and McLaren definitely will be the two quickest teams, and then probably followed up by Mercedes, Ferrari, and then, Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin, and then probably after that, Haas, Alpine, Williams, teams like that. So yeah, that's the teams, I guess, to look out for in the middle sector. And for the final sector, I have decided, let me go back to the track map. The final sector, I've decided to compare to the first sector from Silverstone, because even though the first sector at Silverstone is a bit shorter, it is the most similar that I could find from a recent Grand Prix track we've been to. Because at Silverstone, the first sector is flat out except for turn 3 and 4, which is pretty much a long version of a chicane. And of course, at the end of the final sector here at Spa, we have a bus stop chicane. So that's why I've compared it to the first sector at Silverstone. As you can see, Ferrari and Red Bull were on pretty much the same pace. McLaren, about a tenth of a second away from Ferrari. Williams were very quick. Of course, the flat-out part of that first sector helping. And in the first and third sector, Williams will be on the pace, if not quicker, than than Mercedes and McLaren in dry conditions. I don't have really much doubt about that. It's really the middle sector that's going to cost Williams this weekend. Of course, being able to compete with McLaren and Mercedes, or even Ferrari to a certain extent. Aston Martin were a bit further away, and then Alpine were just behind Aston Martin there. And then the reason Haas, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri in lap time was so far off is because in their part qualifying Q2 and Q1, where they were eliminated respectively, the track conditions were quite a bit worse, which is why the lap time was quite a bit far off. But yeah, in terms of the, if I go back to the track map here, overall, for the entire track, my pecking order, and I've written it down here on my notepad in front of me, the pecking order I believe it will be in qualifying will be Red Bull quickest, Ferrari second, McLaren third, only just ahead of Mercedes fourth, and then Williams fifth, Aston Martin sixth, and then Haas only just ahead of Alpine for seventh. So then it'll be Alpine eighth, Alfa Romeo 9th, and AlphaTauri 10th. That is what my pecking order is for qualifying. Of course, when it comes to the race, it'll be quite a bit different. Ferrari, of course, will be slower. Williams, theoretically, should be slower. Haas as well. So it will, of course, change around when we come to the actual race. So given that's what I think the pecking order will be, let's get into my initial predictions going into the weekend. So again, these predictions are done based on if it is a dry qualifying and race. I have not done a prediction for the sprint race because I just don't care to do a I just don't care to do a prediction for the sprint session or the sprint shootout either. So yeah, we'll just focus on qualifying of the race, the sessions that actually matter. So for qualifying, Max Verstappen, I think, will take pole position by nearly half a second from Charles Leclerc, who will put it on the front row, not that far ahead of the McLaren of Lando Norris and the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. The reason I think the McLaren and the Mercedes will be a lot closer to Leclerc than I thought maybe a few weeks ago around a track like this is because in the middle sector, McLaren and Mercedes will be a lot quicker than Ferrari. And I don't think Mercedes, definitely, the Mercedes Works team, I don't think they're going to be as far off Ferrari in Sector 1 or Sector 3 as maybe people think they will be. But because Charles Leclerc is still amazingly quick around this track, and I still think Ferrari should have just about a quick enough car to, be quicker the McLaren and Mercedes, that's why I've got him on the front row. And then, Norris third, just ahead of Lewis Hamilton in fourth. Wouldn't be surprised, though, if Hamilton was to get ahead of Norris, because I think Mercedes will be better this weekend than what we saw in Hungary compared to McLaren. And then you've got George Russell in fifth place, just behind Lewis Hamilton. Carlos Sainz in P6. Sergio Perez in P7. Now, the reason I've gone with Perez in P7 is because still he is losing a lot of lap time to his teammate, and it will be quite competitive behind Verstappen, so that's why I think Perez will be down in P7. And then the final three positions of the top 10, Oscar Piastri in 8th. The reason I've gone Piastri in 8th is because he hasn't raced here since 2020, and when he did race here in 2020 in the two Formula 3 races, he wasn't very quick. He only qualified 8th in Formula 3 and was quite a bit away from the person that was on pole position. So, yeah, I don't think this is going to be really that strong of a weekend for Piastri. And then P9, Alexander Albon in the Williams, just ahead of Fernando Alonso, P10 in the Aston Martin. So that's my qualifying prediction. Let me know whether you agree or disagree. And for the race, here it is. Max Verstappen, I think, will win by, 35 seconds from his teammate Sergio Perez, who will complete a Red Bull 1-2. Lewis Hamilton will finish not too far behind in third and just ahead of Lando Norris in fourth. Charles Leclerc will finish in fifth, just ahead of George Russell in sixth. Carlos Sainz will be P7 with Piastri 8th. Alonso will beat Albon in the race to P9. The reason is because I think Aston Martin will have a much better race pace than the Williams, and somehow, some way, I think Alonso will find his way past. So yeah, that's why I'm going Alonso in P9. And then Alex Albon to round out the top 10 and put Williams, if this result was to actually play out, would put Williams 1 point clear of Haas in the battle for 7th in the championship. And if this result was to come true, then Mercedes, of course, would pull even further away in second. Ferrari would score 16 points as opposed to the 2 points for Aston Martin. So Ferrari would be probably, well, it depends how the sprint race goes, but they would give themselves, if they would get this type of result, if not better, compared to Aston Martin, they would give themselves a pretty good chance of getting on terms, if not going ahead of Aston Martin in the championship. McLaren would score, 16 points, which is not great, but we have to be honest with McLaren. This circuit is not really going to be a strong track for them. It's not really a McLaren circuit. McLaren, their car works best around medium or high aero circuits. Around low aero circuits like the Red Bull Ring, Spa, Monza, I would say as well. It's not going to be delivering to the potential that we know it, can deliver at, like we saw in Hungary a week ago, and like we saw at Silverstone 3 weeks ago. So that's why I think McLaren are not going to have as great of a weekend as we've seen recently. But yeah, those are my predictions. We'll see if they come true or not. Of course, with the qualifying prediction, if I go back to it, that will remain the same going into qualifying tomorrow, because obviously qualifying is, going to be only, couple hours after the only practice session of the weekend. So I can't really change my predictions around based on one practice session. For the race, though, of course, that is not my, if I go back to the race prediction, that is not my final prediction for the race. That is just my initial prediction going in to the weekend. Once I've seen, qualifying and seen some data coming out of the sprint race as well, then I will probably change my prediction. And of course, I'll have to change it based on what the starting grid is for the Sunday race. So yeah, we will see. But before, guys, I get into the next few things here in this stream, I just wanted to say quickly that I do have a poll running at the top of the live chat. The poll is me asking you guys who is most likely to challenge Red Bull at this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix. The options are Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Aston Martin. Let me know who you think is most likely to put up a fight. For me, probably Ferrari for most of the weekend, but in the actual Sunday race, I think Mercedes will be the second best team. Of course, we'll find out more so tomorrow. And talking of tomorrow, let me just update you guys as to the next two pieces of content and what I'm doing tomorrow and on Saturday. So tomorrow, I will be live at 2:30 p.m. UK time until 5:30 p.m. for the qualifying watch-along. Qualifying starts at 4 p.m. UK time. Me going live will be 1 hour after practice 1 and an hour and a half before qualifying starts. So make sure to come along to that. Again, reminder, the Friday qualifying session sets the grid for Sunday's Grand Prix. And then on Saturday, I'm going to be doing a watch-along for the F2 sprint race, and then a sprint race preview and watch-along for the F1 sprint, of course. The F1 sprint race, if you're wondering, starts at 3:30 p.m. UK time. on Saturday. So I'll be live from 12:30 p.m. UK time for, firstly, again, the F2 sprint. Then we'll get into the preview for the sprint race and then the watch along for the sprint race. And we'll be finishing up around 4:30 p.m. And then, of course, on Sunday, I'll be live at 12 p.m. UK time for the race preview, race watch along, and race reaction. And, of course, I'll be live 2 hours before the race gets underway. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. We do qualifying and race watch-alongs for every Grand Prix. And as well, for everyone watching right now, smash that like button. We're currently on 11 likes. Let's try and get up to 20 plus likes if we can in the next few minutes. So, let's get on to the next thing I wanted to get into, which is not getting into the teams necessarily. Yeah, it is getting into the teams. What I wanted to get into was car upgrades. And actually, one thing I want to quickly touch on before we go any further is Formula 1 drivers have made a call to the FIA to cancel the Belgian Grand Prix if conditions get too dangerous. So basically what they've said is, don't hesitate to cancel sessions if it's too dangerous. Because, of course, hesitation and complacency can kill people. And, obviously, severely injure people. So, I mean, I do agree with what they're saying. I do have to say, though, looking at the forecast, there has been a lot of scaremongering about this weekend's race in terms of, oh my god, it's going to be a wet weekend, that means people are going to die. That's just not, I mean, let's hope not, of course, but looking at the forecast, it's not going to be as bad as people make out. For qualifying tomorrow, qualifying starts at 5 p.m. local time. The chance of rain is about 40%. And looking at the radar, the only rain in the area looks to be light rain. So even if it does rain, it's not going to be anything to worry about, really. Saturday, the chance of rain for the sprint race is about 50%. The rain on Saturday from the radar does look to be a bit heavier for the area. So if it does rain on Saturday, it will be the heaviest rain we see of the weekend. Of course, if they were to cancel the sprint race, I'd have no problem with that because I absolutely despise the sprint race. But Saturday will most likely be the wettest and heaviest rain we see for the weekend. But Friday, again, if it is rain, it's going to be light rain, nothing to worry about. The type of rain, really, that we saw at Silverstone, which was, I mean, when, it got really heavy in between sessions, it was quite bad. But, I mean, when we saw it during practice 3 at Silverstone, it was lightish rain, nothing really to worry about. So, yeah, I don't think for qualifying tomorrow, there's really much to worry about. And then for Sunday, the chance of rain is about a 50-50. And looking at the radar for Sunday, again, if there is any rain, it's only going to be light rain because there's not any heavy rain bands around for Sunday's race. So what I'm trying to say is, let's not, let's not, what's the point I'm trying to make? Don't get carried away and don't let the people trying to scaremonger on social media make you believe something that just isn't happening. Because again, Spa, we have to remember, it rains all the time at Spa because of where it is in the world. It's a very wet part of Europe. It's always been this way. So, the chance of racing at Spa, even during the summer, and not seeing rain is, is, I wouldn't say quite unlikely, but chances are during a race weekend at Spa, you're going to have some rain, even if it's just light rain for one session out of 5 during a weekend. Again, it's quite a rare thing to have a completely bone dry weekend at Spa. So let's remember that. And secondly, again, looking at the forecast, most of the rain forecast, if it does actually hit the track, again, Spa is a weird place. The rain that is forecast sometimes doesn't always actually happen. Sometimes rain can literally come out of nowhere. The rain, though, that is forecast, most of it is light rain, and there's nothing to worry about when it comes to light rain, because even when the cars are out there in light rain conditions, the spray is not going to be that bad. So, yeah, let's not fall victim to the scaremongering online about, oh, people are going to get injured or die or any of this stuff. You know, let's not play into that and overreact, I guess is what I am trying to say on that. But yeah, we'll now go on to some car upgrade stuff. There isn't an absolute ton to get into because we haven't got the official list of upgrades yet. But there is a couple things to touch on, and the biggest thing I would say is the new Mercedes side pod. Now, it's not a massively new side pod, but it is a different design for the side pod area, which I will now show off. And here you go, Albert Fabrega, of course, showing these off. So on the top here, you can see the outer part of the side pod. On the top is the new one, on the bottom is the old one, and you can see with where his hands are pointing, the new shape to the side pod, and a lot more sucked in on the main part or the main body of the side pod itself. So just a different shape there they've designed as it heads down towards the floor, when on the bottom one you can see that it is not like that at all. So a new side pod design, and we believe there might be a new floor to go along with this. Normally, when the teams redesign the side pod, they also redesign the floor, because obviously they both interact with each other. If you redesign one area, you've got to redesign the other. So it should be a new floor for Mercedes as well. So in terms of upgrades this weekend, Mercedes are really the team to look out for. And then also, I think maybe a slight difference to the cooling inlet for Mercedes. And also, they do have a new rear wing, as you can see here, which is, I think, primarily for low downforce tracks. And yeah, it's just a bit less draggy of a low downforce rear wing for them. Here's some other pictures of the new Mercedes side pod. On the top here again, you can see the new one, the bottom, the old one, and you can see really well here the different shape they have gone for. So actually, it is quite a different side pod design compared to the one we saw in Monaco, which was really the basic version of the new design concept they are going for. So this upgrade really should be a big upgrade for the Mercedes team. Might be a bit hampered by the wet weather this weekend and by it being a sprint weekend, but if they can gain the lap time from it that I would expect of, you know, a quarter of a second or 0.3 of a second at most, this will be massive for Mercedes, because it will really enable them, not this weekend, but maybe at a couple tracks remaining in the season, to get close enough to Red Bull to actually give Red Bull some trouble, at least more consistently in qualifying. I know, of course, Lewis Hamilton got pole position in Hungary, but I think that was more because of a special lap from Hamilton than it was because of the Mercedes car being so quick. And yeah, here is the new side pod inlet. The top here is the new one, on the bottom is the old one. So I think you can just about see slight differences there. But it really is this area of the side pod which is the main difference. And again, it is a big upgrade. There should be a new floor to go along with it. and they are the team to look out for this weekend when it comes to upgrades. Also, Laurent Mekies, the racing director of Ferrari for the last, this is a Ferrari statement, for the last 4.5 seasons, he has left the team, and he is now the what do you call it? Is it starting from this weekend or next year? I'm not sure exactly, but he is now pretty much the new team principal, Laurent Mekies, of AlphaTauri. And the new sporting director is Diego either Ioverno or Laverno. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm not sure if it's an L or an I there. But yeah, in terms of upgrades, that is the only big upgrade we can see so far. And again, it is a big upgrade, so watch out for Mercedes this weekend. They might be just a bit quicker than expected, but yeah, given that it's a sprint weekend, and as well, you know, we're going to see probably some wet weather at times, this might not be the best Grand Prix to really see the improvement. Probably the next Grand Prix on the calendar, the first race after the summer break, the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, will probably be the best track. Well, not the best track, but the closest track on the calendar to us, to really see that improvement from the Mercedes team. So yeah, we will see either, you know, to a degree this weekend, or, you know, after the summer break, that real improvement there. So, right, in a moment, I will get on to the teams. Just want to quickly check a couple other things to see if there's anything else I can show you guys from Twitter. And I don't think there is anything. So, no. Anyway, let's get into the teams, and let me get into a bit more depth as to how I think they'll get on this weekend. Starting with, of course, the best team by far in Formula 1, Red Bull Racing. And yeah, Red Bull last weekend in Hungary were truly awesome. And the reason they were so dominant in the race, guys, not just because they do have the best car, but they were able, with Max Verstappen, maybe to a certain extent with Sergio Perez as well, they were able to set the car up purely for the race, which is why in qualifying they weren't necessarily that quick. But that's why in the race they ended up winning by such a massive margin. Max Verstappen winning by almost 34 seconds over Lando Norris. An incredible difference in lap time. You know, at times during the race, there were times where the Red Bull was going a second quicker than the McLarens. It was just incredible, really, to witness such domination. Similar, I would say, to the 2020 Mercedes at times, the speed difference that we saw from the Red Bull. But, I mean, this weekend is going to be, as long as Verstappen and Red Bull don't make any massive errors, it should be a very comfortable weekend, because the Red Bull the Red Bull car is the perfect car for this track layout, because they've got the top speed and tons of grip to go along with it, when of course McLaren and even Mercedes don't quite have that, you know, the balance properly with their car yet to be, you know, so quick around a track like this. So yeah, Red Bull, at least with Max Verstappen, if we go back onto him, he will dominate the weekend, and that's why I think he'll be on pole by about half a second, and he'll win the race by over 30 seconds, because him and that car right now is just too good of a combination. He is absolutely at one with the car. He loves this racetrack. It is a home race of sorts for him. And the Red Bull car, yeah, is perfect for this racetrack. So there's absolutely no chance of Red Bull not winning the race. Maybe in qualifying, you know, you could get a Ferrari on pole, or if it's a wet session, you never know. Maybe even McLaren snatching pole position. But in the race, dry or wet, I think Verstappen wins the Belgian Grand Prix. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't able to do so. So yeah, Red Bull going to dominate the weekend. Sergio Perez, if we just go back onto him, yeah, in qualifying, I still think he will struggle quite a bit. I mean, in Hungary, his performance in the race was definitely quite a bit better than what we've seen recently, but the amount of lap time he is losing to Max Verstappen per lap is still quite a lot, and I think that will continue this weekend, especially with this track being one that Max likes quite a bit. So yeah, Perez, that's why I've gone with him down in 7th on the grid. But because of how quick, the Red Bull car is around this track and how quick it will be in race conditions, and with also how Perez, he is quite a bit stronger at a track like Spa than he is around the Hungaroring. That's why I think he has a very good chance of finishing second in the race, even if he starts lower than P7 and down in P9, P10. I still think his chances of a podium or even second place are still very good because the Red Bull car is, again, perfect for this racetrack. So yeah, Red Bull, I think, will dominate the weekend. Max Verstappen should take his 8th win in a row. And just to let you guys know, Max needs to win this weekend the Dutch Grand Prix and the Italian Grand Prix to break the record of Sebastian Vettel, the most wins consecutively by an F1 driver. Vettel has the record of 9, of course, from the Belgian Grand Prix of 2013 until the very end of the season, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, 9 race wins. Max is currently on 7 wins in a row, which I think equals Hamilton from not sure exactly when. Michael Schumacher had a run of 7 wins in a row, and also Alberto Ascari. So it's very special company that he's keeping, but he could break yet another record. Let's see if he does so. But let's go on to, now that we've seen that upgrade from Mercedes, let's get onto them now, because they are a bit of a wild card, I think, for this weekend, because if that upgrade does work well, then Mercedes might be able to jump back ahead of McLaren in the pecking order from now on. Of course, McLaren, I don't think are done officially with car upgrades. I'm pretty sure they will be bringing something, probably by the end of the European season, and maybe something as a small upgrade at the start of the autumn season. So we'll see what happens with that. But it really would be a massive upgrade or improvement for them if it does, give them the lap time that, of course, it's said in the wind tunnel that it would. And given the type of upgrade it is, again, it should be about a 2 to 3 tenths of a second gain, I would imagine, with that upgrade. So I will keenly watch out for their speed in the middle sector, because that will be the only sector that will really tell us if those upgrades have worked or not. So yeah, watch out for Mercedes. I think they might be quite a bit stronger as a team this weekend with their performance than they were in Hungary. Even though, again, they were on pole, it was really because of a special Lewis Hamilton qualifying lap. I don't think it was because Mercedes were the quickest team. I think really overall Mercedes were probably the 3rd best team in qualifying. It was, of course, very close between all those teams, Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, but I don't think Mercedes were the quickest team in qualifying a week ago, and they were still giving up quite a bit of time to Red Bull, even around such a short lap. So yeah, that kind of papered over the cracks for a day or so, did that whole position. Yeah, Mercedes, I think, will have an overall better weekend. I think they'll score more points as a team than what we saw in Hungary. And I think compared to McLaren, they definitely will be performing better. Again, not necessarily will they beat McLaren, but they will be better compared to what we saw in Hungary and even at the British Grand Prix 3 weeks ago. So yeah, Mercedes, as well with their lower downforce rear wing, which theoretically should help their pace as well in Sector 1 and Sector 3. Mercedes should have, I think, a pretty decent weekend, and probably a weekend that is a bit better than most Mercedes fans would imagine it to be. Of course, this time last year, or not this time last year, but when we came to the Belgian Grand Prix last year, Mercedes were terrible. They were really poor in qualifying. And in the race, I mean, they were a bit better, but they were so far behind Red Bull, given that at the time, Red Bull and Mercedes, I don't think were necessarily separated by as much of a gap as they are now. So, yeah, it was a really poor weekend. Mercedes were incredibly depressed after qualifying. We'll see, of course, how this weekend goes. But I do have a feeling that this is going to be a better weekend than expected. So, yeah, we will see how the upgrade works for them. And like I said, I will keep a keen eye on their middle sector times to see if it is giving them a bit extra pace. Because let's say they are a couple tenths of a second quicker than McLaren, or nearly a couple tenths of a second quicker than McLaren in the middle sector. That would be quite a big gain of lap time through the corners with this new side pod and floor. And it would mean that really going forward at medium or high aero tracks, that Mercedes would then be back ahead of the McLaren team. And well, not even back ahead of the McLaren team around those type of circuits. They'd be back ahead of McLaren, period, because obviously they are running the same power units. So yeah, it is a vital upgrade for Mercedes to get back ahead of McLaren. Possibly, you never know, they could this weekend, if it really works well for them, be the second best team even in qualifying trim. So we will see how the new side pod and floor works for them. But Lewis Hamilton, if I just quickly go back onto him, he will be the strongest Mercedes driver this weekend. He's always been fantastically quick here. I'm going to go him, what was it, 4th in qualifying, just behind Lando Norris. Again, though, I would not be surprised if he out-qualified Norris, because I think he'll be very fast in qualifying, as he usually is. And in the race, I think Mercedes will be faster than McLaren, which is why I'm going Lewis Hamilton 3rd in the Merc. For George Russell, I just don't think he's going to be as quick as Hamilton. He did have, I will say, a good race in Hungary, given how far he started back. I mean, he finished, about half a minute behind his teammate, and he started 19th when Lewis started on pole. So that is a really good performance, I think, from Russell during the race. Of course, Hamilton did have overheating issues, which exacerbated his poor race. Obviously not because of him, but really from the team. But still, I thought that was a very impressive performance in the race. But yeah, this season, as we've seen, and really since the side pod redesign back in Monaco, Mercedes, have seen a complete reversal, pretty much, of who the number one driver has been at the team. Obviously, before that upgrade in Monaco, the two drivers really were 50-50. But really, since Monaco, Hamilton has been the consistent, better driver. And probably will continue to be that until the very end of the season. So, yeah, Hamilton, that's why I think will be ahead of Russell. And yeah, I've gone, I think, 5th in qualifying for Russell and 6th in the race. So, yeah, that's what I think with Mercedes. Which, to be honest, that wouldn't be that bad of a weekend, 3rd and 6th in the race. That'd be probably a bit better than I think most Mercedes fans probably expect going into this weekend's race. Aston Martin. Now, apparently, according to their team principal, Mike Crack, I'll make sure to say that name carefully so it doesn't get misconstrued with something else. But he has said that there will be tweaks to the floor of the Aston Martin. Of course, tomorrow we will find out officially what those tweaks are, but let's hope they're a bit more than just tweaks and that it's a proper redesign to improve their speed. Because at the minute, they're a midfield team. They're not a front-running Formula 1 team anymore. In Hungary, I think they're actually quite lucky that Alpine were knocked out at the very start of the race, because we never got to see rather, how quick Alpine could have been. Because Alpine, I do get a feeling, could have been as quick, if not quicker, than Aston Martin in the race. And Aston Martin may have struggled to even take away a point. But, Fernando Alonso finished almost a lap behind Max Verstappen. He was only probably another 3-4 laps away from being lapped in Hungary. Lance Stroll did end up a lap down. And yeah, they are a midfield team. They're not on the same level. They're nowhere near Red Bull. They're miles away from Red Bull. And compared to McLaren and Mercedes, they're miles away from them as well. Because, McLaren, with Lando Norris, they finished about 42 seconds ahead of Alonso and the Aston Martin. That's an average of what? 0.6 of a second per lap quicker that McLaren were over Aston Martin. That's an incredible amount of time around such a short racetrack. So, yeah, Aston Martin really will do well to score points this weekend, given how quick the Williams team will be here at Spa. Fernando Alonso, even though he's never won the Belgian Grand Prix, I think he will still drag that car into the top 10, because Alonso has been performing at a very high level this year. And yeah, that's why I think he'll be in the top 10 in qualifying, just about. And then we'll finish P9 in the race. But unless this Aston Martin upgrade is big, then I don't see them significantly getting closer to McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, or, of course, Red Bull. I think they need really something as big as what we saw from McLaren in terms of an upgrade, back in Austria, to really get themselves back to where they were. But even, an upgrade like what Mercedes have brought this weekend, a new side pod and most likely a new floor, even that would be probably enough to put them maybe not on the same pace as McLaren and Mercedes, but back in the conversation for sure with those teams. Because at the minute, not only are they not as quick, they're not in the conversation. They're just they're not on the same level whatsoever. So yeah, Aston Martin, it's going to be a trouble weekend for them. Fernando Alonso, like I said, will finish in the points, but as to whether they're going to be better than I expected, it really is dependent on how big those upgrades are. They will, of course, be praying for quite a bit of rain, because I think that definitely improves Aston Martin's chances of a good weekend. But if it is dry for most of the important sessions, Aston Martin have not got the car to be really quick at all this weekend. And I think they will be closer, definitely, to teams like Williams, Haas, Alpine, and even Alfa Romeo. Aston Martin, just, again, incredible, the drop-off we've seen in just the last month or so. Never mind the last 2 months. Let's now go on to the Scuderia. And yeah, the reason with Ferrari, I still, have ranked them as the second quickest team for this weekend, at least in qualifying trim. The reason, though, I don't think they'll be as clearly ahead of, say, McLaren and Mercedes, like I thought, say, a month ago, if you were to ask me a month ago how I thought Ferrari would perform around a track like this compared to those teams, is because in Hungary, Ferrari were not just slower than McLaren and Mercedes, they were miles off, really. Lando Norris finished, 30 seconds, pretty much, ahead of Charles Leclerc on track. I know Leclerc, of course, had the 5-second penalty, but even if you take that away, Norris was still half a minute clear. And Sainz obviously was a few seconds back on Leclerc. And then Lewis Hamilton, wasn't a million miles away from Norris. So they were pretty much, during the Hungarian Grand Prix, forgetting Red Bull and how quick they were compared to Ferrari, they were pretty much Ferrari half a second per lap slower than the than McLaren and Mercedes. And if you actually look at the end race result, Fernando Alonso in ninth was only 5 seconds or 4 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. So, I mean, they are quicker than Aston Martin right now, because we do have to remember that Hungary is a weak track for the Ferrari team. They go better at definitely circuits more so like this, where you don't have to run as much aero. But, yeah, compared to McLaren and Mercedes, they were just nowhere near them. And from an aerodynamic perspective, they are just not on McLaren or Mercedes' level. And that's why this weekend, even though because of their very strong power unit and very strong aerodynamic efficiency at high speed, I don't think they're going to be that far ahead of McLaren and Mercedes on low fuel. And that's why I think in the race, Leclerc will only finish in 5th place behind Hamilton and Norris, because I just don't think the Ferrari will be legitimately quick enough to hang on ahead of Mercedes and McLaren in the race, because, like I said, from an aero perspective, Mercedes and McLaren are quite clearly a lot better than the Ferrari team. So, yeah, Ferrari, I think, we'll see Leclerc on the front row for the race on Sunday. Leclerc, we do have to remember, is very good around this circuit. So that will definitely help Ferrari's performance this weekend. Carlos Sainz will probably be stuck more so fighting, around 6th, 7th place. Carlos's pace, in Hungary wasn't, in the race it wasn't too bad, but in qualifying and practice as well, his pace was not really that good at all compared to his teammate Charles Leclerc. So I think that will continue this weekend, and that's why he'll be quite a bit further behind on the grid. But yeah, I think, Ferrari, because again of their lack of race pace and how far they've fallen behind aerodynamically, the Red Bull, McLaren, and Mercedes teams, I just don't think they can hang on in front of those teams in the race. The only reason I've got Leclerc finishing ahead of Russell is because Leclerc will have the advantage of track position compared to Russell, who will be starting, in my view, back in 5th, when Leclerc will be on the front row in 2nd place. So, yeah, I feel quite depressed when it comes to Ferrari, because a month or so ago, it was looking like they had made, quite an improvement. And I think initially they did. But because of McLaren's, massive upgrade, and McLaren, of course, have fully realised the potential of that upgrade, and with Mercedes bringing a new front wing at Silverstone, and probably, or they have got a new side pod and floor this weekend, Ferrari have been left behind a bit when it comes to aerodynamic upgrades, and that's why at the moment they're in a position where they're just not on the level of those teams. But given that Ferrari do have a bit more wind tunnel time for the second half of this season, I would imagine that there is one more big upgrade to come from Ferrari. So if you're a Ferrari fan in regards to this season, I wouldn't panic necessarily in terms of, Ferrari going to be dropping back into the midfield. I don't think that's going to happen. Because again, I think Ferrari will bring another upgrade which will, move them a bit closer to the teams ahead of them. But yeah, I just don't think at the minute Ferrari can really compete from an aerodynamic perspective with those teams. So really, they're going to be super reliant on teams like, or not teams, but they're going to be super reliant on their own amazing power unit performance to really balance out the difference between, aero and straight line speed to allow them to properly get into the fight with those teams. Because if it's all about aero, Ferrari are just, again, they're just not on that level. So we'll see how they get on. Ferrari will be praying for dry weather. There is absolutely no doubt about it. That, in the wet, even though they've got two good wet weather drivers, I just don't think their car is as strong in wet conditions. And I think we have seen proof of that to a certain extent so far this year, and even to a degree during last year as well. So, yeah, Ferrari, it's not going to be the easiest weekend, but if they can secure a podium in the race on Sunday, that would be a great result. It really would. And it would be, I think, given where they were in Hungary, and to a degree where they were at Silverstone, it would give them definitely a big boost going into the summer break. That there is still hope to be had for the Ferrari team, when after the last couple races, really any hope that we had a month ago about this team has been really evaporated, which is obviously not great to see. And the final team we'll go on to before we come into your comments in the live chat, of course, guys, make sure to keep those comments coming, is McLaren, who, again, from a aero perspective, they are the second best team right now in Formula One. I said it after Silverstone. Some of you guys didn't quite believe me and thought it was too early to say that, but I was proven absolutely right in Hungary. They're not miles ahead of Mercedes necessarily, but I think until we see what this new upgrade for Mercedes does, I think we can say McLaren are definitely ahead of Mercedes right now in aero terms, and around most tracks that will obviously help McLaren be quicker than the Works team. But this weekend, again, as I said earlier, it's not going to be one of the circuits that McLaren really are going to like that much. Their car is going to enjoy medium or high aero tracks. This circuit in the dry is a low downforce track. I know you have the middle sector, which has quite a few corners, but because of how long the first and the third sector is, that's why we see teams running quite skinny rear wings and really trimming the downforce, is because of how long those power sections are here at Spa. So because McLaren have a Mercedes power unit, of course, that is going to hurt them this weekend, and that's why they're not going to be, say, as close to Red Bull in qualifying as what we saw, obviously, in Hungary. So, yeah, if you're a McLaren fan, don't be coming into this weekend expecting miracles or expecting anything as good as what we saw at Silverstone, for example. I don't think that is really that possible. And really, the next track on the calendar where McLaren should be, quite quick will be Zandvoort, the Dutch Grand Prix, which is the first race again after the summer break at the end of August. But yeah, McLaren, their main fight this weekend is with Ferrari and Mercedes. If they can be the second best team in qualifying, that would be a really super effort, given how, again, this is a power track and you wouldn't expect McLaren to be quicker than Ferrari. So if they can still be quicker despite the straight line speed deficit that they have to Ferrari, that would be incredibly impressive, and would just show how far they've come since the start of the season. Because at the start of the season, this would have been one of their not just weakest tracks, but it would have been a track where they would have been pretty much at the back of the field. So it would be a really good indicator to show, again, just the progress that McLaren have made. But in the race, I do expect McLaren and Mercedes, as I said, to be quicker than Ferrari. The issue is McLaren are not as quick in a straight line as Mercedes are. We have seen that so far this season. The difference isn't massive. Of course, they are running the same power unit, but the difference has been about a couple kilometers an hour, maybe a kilometer an hour at most. But of course, say if you're Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes and you're in the slipstream of Lando Norris, you're getting that slipstream effect, and you have the DRS. That is quite a bit of a gain in a straight line, a couple kilometers an hour. So that could really make the difference in the race between who finishes on the final place on the podium, if it is indeed a Red Bull 1-2 in the race. So, yeah, that's really what's going to decide it, I think, this weekend, unless Mercedes' new side pod and floor gives them that much more lap time that Mercedes are just quicker than McLaren in all parts of the track, which, of course, for McLaren would be quite a deflating moment for them, given how high they've been, really, the last couple race weekends, where they've been, where they are at the minute, McLaren, the last two race weekends, they've been the second best team. They've not been as quick as that since 2012. It's been a very long time they've been this consistently quick. Over, two straight weekends. In 2021, we did see some great pace from them, but they still weren't on the same level as Mercedes or Red Bull. And even at times, they weren't as quick as Ferrari either. So, yeah, it would be, again, quite a deflating moment for McLaren if that was to happen. But we will see if it does. McLaren definitely will be hoping for some rain this weekend, and if it does rain at the most critical points, with the two drivers they've got, you can guarantee that they will benefit quite a bit. And if it does rain in Q3 or in the race, watch out for this man on screen, Lando Norris, because in 2021, in a McLaren car that wasn't as good, he was, in qualifying, if you remember, guys, he was incredibly quick. He was quickest in Q1 and Q2, and it was looking like he was going to get pole position until we had his crash at the top of Eau Rouge and Radion. So, yeah, if it is a wet qualifying or wet race, Lando is absolutely one of the people to look out for in terms of causing a surprise. And you never know, surprise pole position, maybe even, dare I say, surprise race win. But yeah, let's go on to, or back onto these pictures. And yeah, I will get onto the rest of the teams in a moment. I just want to come to you guys though in the chat. Let me know what you think is going to happen this weekend. Just want to say again, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because of course during the whole weekend we'll keep you bang up to date with everything going on at the Belgian Grand Prix. And make sure to smash the like button. We're currently on 17 likes. Let's try and get over 20 if we can by the end of the stream. But yeah, let's get into your comments and I'll read out a few before I move on. Good to see you all, by the way, as usual. Vince just saying I'm listening at work today. I may be quiet, but I'm here. Everyone at home calls me Vinny. Good to see you still listening. Vinster or Vinny. I'm not sure if I'll call you Vinster or Vinny, to be honest, because I'm not sure which of those I'll call you, because, again, I'm so used to calling you Vinster. Says, I'm expecting Mercedes to gain the most this weekend, hoping Danny finishes in the points before the end of the season. Top 12 would be phenomenal. Yeah, we'll get on to Ricciardo later. Spa normally is a good racetrack for him. I think, though, his efforts this weekend going to be hampered quite a bit with the car he's driving, and he definitely, and AlphaTauri, will be praying for a lot of rain, because in the dry, I don't think they have any chance of a good result, because this is one of the worst type of tracks for their car. Justin Salinas says, I just can't see Ricciardo back at Red Bull. He'll be, what, 36 by the time Checo's contract runs out? Let me see how old Daniel Ricciardo is. Perez's contract, I think, is... yeah, so he's 34. And Perez's contract... is it up at the end of 2025 or 2024? Let me just quickly check. And I think it's until the end of 2025. Let me just quickly confirm that, if I can. Oh no, until the end of 2020. Oh no, this is an old article. Hold on. Yeah, see, it's either the end of 2024 or 2025. I can't remember exactly when he signed his last contract. I know he signed one after the Monaco Grand Prix win. I'm not sure if he signed another one after that. Actually, one thing to get into is F1 driver contracts, because I just want to let you guys know, actually, who is out of contract at the end of the year. So Perez, just to confirm, is out of contract at the end of 2024. And yeah, by the time Ricciardo races for Red Bull, yeah, he'd be 35, 36. Hamilton, still not officially contracted until, or, you know, past this season. Lewis Hamilton's contract still officially, for the moment, comes to the end at the end of this season. I love how on this list I've found on this Planet F1, how Lance Stroll, his just says contract duration unknown. Just sums up how farcical a situation that is. Zhou Guanyu is out of contract at the end of the year, and after what I saw in Hungary, not sure he'll be around next year. Ricciardo's out of contract at the end of this year for AlphaTauri. So is Yuki Tsunoda. Or has Tsunoda been signed up for another year since then? Let me just check. No, Tsunoda still... yeah, Tsunoda still hasn't signed a new contract at AlphaTauri. I guess, really, they're waiting to see how Perez performs to really decide what they're going to do. Alexander Albon apparently has his contract comes to an end at the end of the year. So does Logan Sargent, and so does Kevin Magnussen, according to this list. So the people with their contracts coming to an end at the end of this year are Hamilton, Zhou, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Albon, Sargent, and Magnussen. Let me just check, though, quickly with Alex Albon, if that is true. Because, again, there might have been a contract signed since then. Yeah. Right, so, well, from ESPN, it says, last year, Alex Albon will continue racing for Williams until at least 2024. So that information on Albon was incorrect. And for Logan Sargent, let's just have a look at his contract. Yeah, Logan Sargent's contract does appear to be up at the end of the year. So we'll see what happens with that. The drivers at risk of losing their seat, I would say, is Zhou Guanyu, Kevin Magnussen, who hearing some interesting things out of Haas in regards to whether he will stay. We thought it was a formality, but Haas don't sound exactly keen on re-signing him at the minute. I mean, on pure performance, Logan Sargent definitely is at risk, but I'm not sure he's actually going to be off the grid for next season. So yeah, we'll see on that. I'd have to say at the moment, Logan is not performing well enough to be a Formula 1 driver. But, I mean, we've still got quite a few races to go this season. So, let's see. And then either Tsunoda or Ricciardo, I wouldn't say are at risk of losing their place in Formula 1. But, yeah, AlphaTauri will most likely have a different driver lineup next season. Josiah says, I can tell you right now, Ferrari will not be the second fastest car in qualifying. We'll see. We'll see. Say Regara, am I right? The sprint race is 11 laps? Nope, it's 15 laps. Of course, though, it is quite a long lap. So, going to be probably about a 35 to 40 minute race, probably. As long as there's no safety car or anything. The only session that might get cancelled is FP1. We'll see. Let me just look at the forecast for practice 1. And yeah, the rain or the chance of rain is definitely a bit higher at that part of the day, but I mean, we'll have to see what happens. Looking at the weather radar, yeah, there's definitely rain in the area, but again, it looks more light rain rather than heavy rain. So, we will see. Vincent says, to be fair, they have young drivers in the rain. That's an issue. The risk is always there, just more when it's wet. It's racing. The new Merc, or that new Merc sidepod is fugly. To be honest, I don't mind it. I like the... I know people criticize these cars in terms of like how wide they are, how heavy they are. I mean, I do. I think they are too wide and too heavy, but the actual shape of the cars, I do like quite a bit. It's just, yeah, they need to be smaller. And, of course, way less to improve the racing. So, Josiah says, someone save Seb. Put Seb in the Red Bull in one race and he'll snap it. Darth Lord Raven. So I understood there will be a lot of rain this weekend. I live in the Netherlands, not far from Spa, and it's bad weather here right now. Well, today in a Spa, I mean, you can actually see it in some of these pictures, which are actually from the Spa weekend so far. Here you can see, yeah, quite a lot of rain today. But today, I think, is a lot wetter in that part of Belgium than it is going to be for the rest of the week. So, I don't think today is an indicator as to how the weekend will be weather-wise, necessarily. McLaren F1 race. Wonder when the FIA will publish the cost cap report this year. Initially, they reckoned on before the August break. It would be great if they did it in the summer break, to be honest. But yeah, we don't know exactly when. I don't think I've talked about this with you guys yet, but yeah, apparently there is 3 teams from last year that have breached the budget cap. We don't know who those teams are. We don't even know if it is 3 teams, so we'll have to see. But I mean, there was talk last year because of inflation that was quite an issue in the world economy, of course, last year. Still is, to a degree, this year. There was talk, I think, from Toto Wolff and even Mattia Binotto, when he was team principal of Ferrari last year, that, you know, overspending was definitely a thing that could happen during 2022. So I'm not necessarily surprised that that is that we've got a couple teams possibly overspending. Again, though, please do not overreact to the news in regards to that, because I mean, with Red Bull last year, we saw such an overreaction with their with how much they overspent by. I mean, I think the penalty they received with the wind tunnel, I think, was a fair penalty, because I don't think in reality they gained that much from the overspend. I think 1.8 million of their overspend was an unclaimed tax credit, which has nothing to do with car development or anything like that. The overspend was, I think, £400,000, which is, not just over, but it's not. And then when you look at, the reasons in the actual FIA document, the actual reasons for why they overspent, a lot of it was for stuff that, had nothing to do with car stuff, really. So, and obviously it was relating back to 2021. So, yeah, what I'm trying to say is just don't overreact to the news or come to wild conclusions without evidence, because there will be many people on social media who will be doing that, coming to wild conclusions based off of just rumors. So, yeah, we will see on that soon. And of course, I'll bring you any news on that when it does occur. Looney Classic says Lewis did not outperform the car in Hungary qualifying. This is physics, and the lap he did was within reach of the car. If the car was not fast enough to do the lap, he would have not gone that fast. That is not what we mean by outperforming the car. And I think outperforming the car, yeah, probably is the wrong way of putting it. But what we mean is there is only so many Lewis Hamilton level or caliber of drivers in the world. I mean, to be exact, there's probably about 3 or 4 of them, maybe 5 of them, that are around his level at most. And that's me being incredibly generous. I'd probably say in reality, there's probably only, for a qualifying lap, there's probably only one other driver on his level when it comes to that, which is Max Verstappen. And because there are so few drivers of that level, that's why we say stuff like, oh, the car wasn't actually that quick. Or it wasn't, in most cases that quick. It was really because of such a special driver being in the car, or as such a special lap being done by a special driver. Because again, there are only so many Lewis Hamiltons, Max Verstappens, Fernando Alonso's as racing drivers in the world. And that's why, at the end of the day, you have those drivers in your cars. Not to necessarily outperform the car, but because those drivers will find pace in the car that 99.99999% of human beings cannot find. And that is more so what people are talking about. So, yeah, I agree with you with he did not outperform the car, but, when I explained it in the way I just did, I think you can understand what I mean by that. Right. I've just seen some news on Twitter. Important news that I should bring you guys. And it is to do with the sprint format. So, hold on a second. This is breaking news on Twitter. So, yeah, just give me a second here. So, and this is from a Red Bull update account, but they do source where the information came from, motorsport.com, of course, one of the most reliable motorsport publications in the world. The tweet says, new sprint format from 2024 is set to be approved by the FIA and the teams. Here is how the format will change. On Friday, will be practice 1 in the morning like we have now. And then in the afternoon will be the sprint shootout, which will then set the grid for the sprint race, which will be on Saturday in the late morning. And then qualifying for the actual race on Sunday will be in the afternoon on Saturday, as it normally is. And then on Sunday will be the normal race. And to be honest, as a format, I think that is probably the best format. If you're going to have these sessions, that's the best format you could go for. So in regards to a better format, that's great, but still, I don't want a sprint format at all in Formula One. But yeah, I'm guessing we'll see that officially approved in the next either few days or few weeks. I'll let you guys know about that. Let's find a couple more comments and then we will move on for the rest of this stream. McLaren from Racing, that's better, less disjointed. Yeah. It definitely it just feels better, I would say, that format, because with the way the sprint format is at the minute, it breaks up the weekend because you have one whole day dedicated to dedicated to what do you call it? Dedicated to a format that, or to a particular sessions that don't really matter in the in reality. So yeah, I would say that's a better format, and at least it gives us still qualifying on a Saturday afternoon and then Sunday on a race afternoon. Still a practice session on a Friday morning. And I mean, I would prefer that format as well, because it means I don't have to do watch-alongs for every single day of the race weekend, every time we have a sprint weekend. I mean, I'm still going to cover, obviously, qualifying tomorrow, sprint race on Saturday, and then the race on Sunday. But if I was to choose how the format went, I would prefer to do watch-alongs only on a Saturday and a Sunday. So yeah, I think that's a better format for sure. Garthord Raven says, I've been with F1 from age of 15, now 45. Still don't understand the sprint weekend format. I don't get it. From a sporting aspect, yeah, it is hard to really understand why it's been brought in, but the reason, the reason it has been brought in is not for the sporting aspect. It's for purely to attract casuals into Formula One, because cars racing side by side, having more of that in a race weekend is more attractive to the casuals than, just cars on qualifying laps. When for us, that's really exciting, but for the casuals, not so much, because they're going to watch more, or they're more likely to watch if it's more eye-catching what is going on, even if it's not actually the most entertaining way sportingly. So that's why, unfortunately, we have it. And it appears they won't be going anywhere, which is really quite annoying. But let's finish up the stream. Let's go through the final few teams. Let's go on to Alpine. Apparently, Alpine are bringing something this weekend. I have no idea what it is. I did see something earlier about front wing flaps with Alpine, but I'm not sure if that's just a new type of front wing that they used at another race that they're bringing this weekend, or if that is a legitimately new front wing. I do have to say, their obsession with front wings as of late is really weird with Alpine. Because if you look at their front wing design, it is quite drastically different to everybody else's. Yet they're not quick. They've not really done anything to the side pod and floor. They did do a tweak to it in Monaco, and then of course delivered a podium. You'd think they would keep upgrading that area, but clearly not. Yeah, the Alpine, for some reason with their upgrades, just obsessed on the front wing rather than the most important areas, which are the side pod and, most importantly, of course, the floor. We'll see what upgrades officially they do have, but I don't see them being quick at all this weekend. Their top speed is not good enough, and compared to everybody else, their aerodynamic grip just isn't strong enough. It's not where it was compared to the other teams a couple months ago, so that's why they will be one of, in the dry, the slowest teams this weekend. I'm not saying they'll be the slowest, but they will be fighting with Haas and even maybe Alfa Romeo to a certain extent this weekend. And I think really their best chance of a great result comes if we do have wet weather, especially the most important times for them. But if not, Alpine will struggle to get into the top 10, and I don't think really will be that strong of contenders for the top 10 either. So yeah, if you're an Alpine fan, go into the weekend with no expectations. That way you won't be disappointed. I think that's the best way to put it. Let's go on to Williams, who I think are the dark horse of the weekend. Williams, we know, at power tracks, they are incredibly quick. They do have the quickest car in a straight line. They have the slippery. Can I even say this word properly? Let me try and say that again. They have the slipperiest, there you go, aerodynamic design out of any team. And of course, they don't have a ton of downforce, which does, to a degree, help with them being so quick around circuits like this. I do have to say, though, once again, Alexander Albon's performance in Hungary was so impressive. 11th place in the race. He wasn't that far behind Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, an Aston Martin car which around that track was a lot quicker in qualifying. And, you know, made progress from 16th up to that position. So yeah, Albon I thought was really one of the stars of that weekend in Hungary. And we saw last year Albon finish in the points, finish in P10. And at one time, I think he was running in 7th or 8th place in the Belgian Grand Prix. So yeah, Albon in this Williams is really the man to look out for if you're looking out for a surprise. Really hope it can stay dry enough for them just to get the best out of this Williams car. This is also another great chance to see if Logan Sargeant can close the gap to his teammate, because still, as of late, the gap between him and Albon is too much. Still quite a few tenths of a second, and this weekend is another chance for Logan that, you know, if he can close that gap by a tenth or two, that he might be able, with the Williams car being, you know, nicely hooked up to this track, that might help him enough to maybe, you never know, score his first Formula 1 point. So we'll see if he can do that. Most likely, I would imagine he won't be able to, because his form hasn't been exactly great in the last couple races. But yeah, this is definitely an opportunity for Logan that he must try and take. But yeah, watch out for Williams. They are without a doubt the dark horse of the weekend. For Haas F1, I think they'll have a decent car probably for qualifying and the sprint race. I mean, their car should be decently quick compared to, say, Alpine and Aston Martin through all of the sectors. They probably won't be as quick as Aston Martin necessarily, but I don't think they'll be that far away at all. It won't be, you know, a massive gap between the two teams and really should be on the same pace with Alpine. So yeah, I think Haas, with their pace again in qualifying and on sprint day, I think their pace will be actually pretty decent, but it won't be good enough for them to be scoring any points. And of course, we know on the Sunday race, they won't have any race pace to score points. So yeah, Hulkenberg probably will get into Q2 and be, I don't know, P11, P12. Again, I just don't think he'll get into the top 10. I have to say, though, the job he did to get into the top 10 in Hungary, I thought was a truly great performance from Hulkenberg, who has had a really great season in 2023. But yeah, this is not going to be, unfortunately, a point-scoring weekend for the American team. Next team is Alfa Romeo. And yeah, Hungary was a disaster. 5th and 7th on the grid. Their best qualifying as a team in, 4 or 5 years. It was that good. It was an incredible Saturday for them. And they weren't even that far away from pole position. They were only about 0.3 of a second away. Again, again, an incredible day. But in the end, they had a shocking start, which really set them up for a shocking race. Valtteri Bottas only finished in P12, couldn't even beat the Williams of Alex Albon, despite the Alfa Romeo being so much quicker than the Williams in qualifying. And for this man, or not this man actually, I didn't find a picture of him earlier to set up the stream, but let me just quickly get into Zhou Guanyu, because I said going into that race after qualifying that, you know, a career high qualifying, the Alfa Romeo car clearly looking very quick. That race was a massive opportunity for him. It was a golden opportunity for him to secure his seat for next year in not just what is going to be next year, the Sauber team, but in Formula One. And what did he do? He didn't even react at the start. He lost almost all the positions he could have at the start. Was actually lucky that the run down to turn 1 is not super long. And then he punted into Daniel Ricciardo. Punted him into the Alpine of Ocon. And then Ocon went into Gasly. So he pretty much eliminated 2 drivers from the race, from the same team, and cost Daniel Ricciardo a decent opportunity of looking at a point in the race. It was a truly shocking and pathetic performance by Zhou Guanyu. And if that is really the only thing of note we see from him for the rest of the season, then he really has blown, I think, quite possibly, his opportunity at staying on the grid. Let me just quickly look at the official F2 Championship standings, just to see how Théo Pourchaire is doing, because of course he is the main man to replace Zhou. And at the minute, Théo 11 points behind Vesti. So Théo Pourchaire still has a great chance of winning the Formula 2 Championship. The fight in the F2 Championship, by the way, is actually closing up, because Victor Martins, Pourchaire's teammate at ART, is up to 4th and is only about 50 points behind and has been very good in the last few races. Iwasa's only 20 points behind. Doohan, about 50 points behind as well. So, we'll have to see how that all plays out. Of course, I will be covering the sprint race for F2 this weekend. A vital race, because this weekend's race in F2 is the 4th to last weekend of the season. For Théo Pourchaire, he has to deliver a good weekend. And if Théo can win the F2 Championship and Zhou does not do anything else really for the rest of the season, then Alfa Romeo, Sauber, whatever you want to call them, they have got to replace Zhou with Pourchaire, because Zhou just isn't, I don't think, a good enough driver to be in Formula One. He, a lot of the time can't match Valtteri Bottas on pace. And then when he does, he doesn't. A lot of the time, he doesn't quite deliver on the pace that the good pace or better pace that he has showed. So yeah, that's why I think if Pourchaire does win the F2 Championship, they've got to make that move and get Pourchaire in, because Théo Pourchaire is a better driver, I think, than Zhou Guanyu. And I've never been a big fan of Zhou in terms of a driver, because I've never really got the feeling that he was actually that great. And really, I've never got the feeling that he was absolutely good enough to be in Formula One. So yeah, we will see about that. But for this weekend, yeah, because this is a power track and Alfa Romeo go a lot better at higher aero circuits because of the drag issue they have on their car, this is not going to be a great weekend for them unless it does rain enough. Then maybe we could see Alfa Romeo pop up into the top 10. You never know. But yeah, most likely Alfa Romeo will be one of the slowest teams this weekend. And so will the final team we're going to go on to, which is Alpha Tauri. Yeah, Hungary was not too bad for them. Ricciardo was quite unlucky to finish in 13th. He probably should have finished in 11th or even possibly P10 with how quick he was during the race. If I could just go back to him again before it's switching. Yeah, Alpha Tauri this weekend not going to be as quick as what we saw in Hungary. They still have quite a big drag issue with their car. We actually saw it in Hungary. They were quite a few kilometers an hour. I think they were 10 kilometers an hour almost slower in a straight line than Haas were. And if that was to replicate this weekend, AlphaTauri would be absolutely nowhere. So, yeah, it shouldn't be that big of a gap in the top speeds between those two teams this weekend, but it just gives you an idea as to why AlphaTauri are not going to be that quick this weekend. So yeah, they will also be praying for rain. Daniel Ricciardo, if it does rain or if we get enough craziness out there, even in dry conditions, if he can just keep it together and deliver on what was I think a very good or a return to Formula One, then maybe, just maybe, you can nick a point from the Belgian Grand Prix. But this AlphaTauri car, fundamentally still quite a poor car. But guys, that is it for this weekend preview. Thank you guys so much for coming along to tonight's stream. Just wanted to read out one final comment, and it's a super chat from Darth Lord Raven for €2. And their prediction is Verstappen, Perez, and Norris for the top 3. And they go on to say Checo should be back now. Yeah, more so, definitely, than he was in Hungary or the races before that. I do agree. I mean, my top 3 for the race on Sunday is Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton. But, yeah, I'd be surprised if it was not a Red Bull 1-2. But thank you guys again for coming along to this weekend preview. Again, a reminder of the next 2 pieces of content. Tomorrow, I will be live from 12... why do I keep saying 12? 2:30 p.m. UK time for the qualifying watch-along for the Belgian Grand Prix. That session, of course, sets the grid for Sunday's race. And I will be live until 5:30 p.m. Qualifying begins at 4 p.m. UK time. And then on Saturday, I will be live to do a watch-along for the F2 sprint race, live from 12:30 p.m. UK time for the very start of the stream. Then we'll be getting into a preview and watch-along of the F1 sprint race. The F1 sprint race on Saturday starts at 3:30 p.m. UK time. Yeah, we'll be getting into that on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I'll be live from 12 p.m. UK time. The race preview, race watch-along, and race reaction. And just so you guys know, there won't be a Monday stream because, of course, this race is the last race before the summer break. So what we're going to do is something a bit different. And I will instead be going live on Tuesday night, not to do a reaction to the weekend, but a reaction to the first half of the season. We'll be doing a mid-season review on Tuesday night. And I think Tuesday is actually the 1st of August. So yeah, we'll be doing a mid-season review on Tuesday night. But that is the content coming up for you guys. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 if you want to keep up with the content on this channel. And if you want to keep up with content and also be part of our community, then don't forget to join our Discord server, link below in the description if you want to join our community. But guys, until my qualifying watch along tomorrow at 2:30 PM UK time, an hour and a half that is before qualifying starts. Until then guys, it has been me, ChazHD, goodbye.